All right, so you wanted to get into the nuts and bolts of how your body works, huh? Well, today we're going to deep dive into the fascinating world of human anatomy and physiology.
And I think you'll be surprised to find that we can actually learn a lot by comparing our bodies to something as familiar as a high-performance car.
Okay, a car analogy. I like where this is going. Well, let's start with the basics. What's the human equivalent of gasoline?
You know, it's actually not that different from what you put in your car. It's sugar.
Wait, really? You're telling me I'm running on sugar?
Well, not table sugar exactly, but glucose. It's a simple sugar our body breaks down from the food we eat,
Oh,
and it's the primary fuel source for our cells.
wow, so when I grab a burger, I'm basically filling up my tank. That's kind of a crazy thought.
It really is. And just like a car engine, our muscles convert that glucose into energy to power all of our movements.
Okay, that makes sense. But
Yes.
cars have pistons and wheels and all these mechanical parts.
Yeah.
What's our version of that?
Well, we've got an even more intricate system. Instead of wheels, we have bones and joints.
So are joints basically like our hinges and gears?
Exactly. Think about bending your arm. Your bicep muscle contracts, which pulls on the bones of your forearm. And that movement is made possible by that hinge-like elbow joint.
Oh, I see. So it's like a system of levers and pulleys all working together to create movement.
Precisely. And the coolest part is we have different types of joints for different motions. Ball and socket joints, like in our hips and shoulders, give us that wide range of rotation, while hinge joints, like in our knees and elbows, allow for bending and straightening.
Hmm.
And of course, we can't forget about the spine.
Oh yeah, the spine's a big one. Especially for golfers like me. What role does the spine play in the golf swing?
It's absolutely essential for generating power and rotation. You know, that twist you make in your swing. A lot of that rotation comes from your thoracic spine, the middle section of your back, not just your lower back.
Really, I always thought it was mostly my lower back.
Hmm.
That's fascinating. I might have to pay more attention to that next time I'm on the course.
I think you'll be surprised how much power you can generate when you engage your thoracic spine correctly. But going back to our car analogy, we've talked about the engine and the moving parts. But a car also needs a fuel system and an exhaust system. What are our equivalents of those?
That's a great point. We can't just be burning fuel without some way to get in and the waste products out.
Exactly. Our fuel system is our digestive system. It's responsible for breaking down the food we eat into those usable bits of glucose. Think of it like a highly efficient disassembly line.
And just like a car needs fuel lines to transport gas to the engine, we have our circulatory system with the heart as the pump to move those nutrients and oxygen around.
You got it. Arteries carry oxygen-rich blood away from the heart veins, bring it back, and those tiny capillaries are where the actual exchange of oxygen and nutrients happens at the cellular level.
And those capillaries are so small that red blood cells have to squeeze through single file. It's mind-boggling how intricate this system is.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it's not just transportation. Blood itself is packed with specialized cells. Red blood cells carry the oxygen. White blood cells are like our internal defense force fighting off invaders, and platelets are the first responders patching up any leaks.
That's like a whole city operating within us,
Yeah.
with different departments all working together to keep things running smoothly.
Exactly. And that brings us to our control center, the nervous system. It's like the driver behind the wheel, making decisions and sending commands.
So the brain is the captain, and the spinal cord and nerves are the communication networks sending messages throughout the body.
Precisely. And here's where things get really interesting. Our bodies are designed with these incredible things called reflexes actions that happen before our brains even have time to process what's going on.
You mean like yanking your hand away from a hot stove before you even realize you're burned? That's always seemed like a superpower to me.
It is. That's your spinal cord taking charge. A super fast emergency braking system bypassing the brain for a split second to protect you from harm. It's pretty amazing.
Okay, so we've got the engine, the fuel lines, the exhaust system, and the control center. This car analogy is really coming together. But what about the car's frame and body? What do we have that's comparable to that?
That's where our skeleton and skin come in. Bones provide the support and structure, and the skin is our protective outer layer. And get this, bone is incredibly strong.
Stronger than steel even.
Well, pound for pound, when it comes to resisting compression, bone is actually stronger than steel. Think about the forces your femur, that big bone in your thigh, can withstand when you're walking or running. It's pretty amazing.
Wow, so we're basically walking around with super strong internal scaffolding.
Yeah.
That's pretty reassuring. But bones alone can't move right. We need those joints we talked about earlier to allow for motion.
You're exactly right. Joints are where two or more bones come together, and they're what allow us to move in all sorts of amazing ways. We've got ball and socket joints, hinge joints, and all sorts of other specialized joints.
Right. But it's not just bone rubbing on bone, is it? There's something about ligaments and cartilage, too. Could you remind me about those?
Of course, ligaments are like strong fibrous ropes that connect bones to each other, helping to stabilize the joints. And cartilage is that smooth, slippery tissue that covers the ends of bones at the joints.
So it's like having built-in shock absorbers and lubricants. Pretty ingenious.
It is. But unfortunately, cartilage doesn't heal well once it's damaged, which is why joint injuries can be so tricky.
That makes sense. So we've got our framework figured out. But what's actually making the movement happen?
That's all about muscles. We have over 600 skeletal muscles that are responsible for all of our voluntary movements. Everything from walking and talking to swinging a golf club.
Wow, over 600. That's a lot of muscles. And how do they actually work? I remember reading something about this crazy microscopic process, but I'm a little fuzzy on the details.
Ah, yes. The sliding filament theory. It's a pretty mind-boggling concept. Basically, within each muscle cell are these tiny fibers that slide past each other to create contraction. Imagine pulling a rope with your fingers interlocked. That's kind of what's happening at a microscopic level within your muscles every time you move.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it. So those tiny filaments pulling on each other are what create the force that moves our bones? That's wild.
Hmm.
And I vaguely remember something about different types of muscle fibers, too. What was that about?
That's right. Just like cars have different types of engines for different purposes, our muscles have different types of fibers that are specialized for different tasks.
You mean those fast-twitch and slow-twitch muscle fibers?
Exactly. Fast twitch fibers are like our turbochargers. They fire quickly and powerfully for short bursts of activity like sprinting or hitting a golf ball.
And slow-twitch fibers are more like the diesel engines. They're all about endurance, keeping us going for long periods of time.
You got it. And the balance of these fibers can vary from person to person, which is why some people are naturally better sprinters while others excel at marathons.
It's like we're all driving slightly different models of the human machine. This is all so incredibly complex, but it's starting to make a lot more sense now.
And we're just getting started. Next, we'll explore how this intricate machine of yours gets the fuel it needs to keep running and dive deeper into the systems that make it all possible.
I'm hooked. Let's keep this deep dive rolling.
So we've talked about glucose being the fuel that powers our bodies, right? But where does that glucose actually come from?
Well, we get it from food, obviously.
Right.
But I've always been a little fuzzy on what happens to that food once it enters my body. It's not like it just magically turns into energy.
You're right, it definitely doesn't happen magically. There is a whole system in place, a finely tuned process that breaks down that food into something our cells can actually use. We call this the digestive system.
The digestive system. Okay, so walk me through it. Where does this process begin?
Well, it all starts in the mouth.
Yeah.
And I'm not just talking about the taste. Chewing is actually the first step in the digestive process.
Chewing.
Yep. Chewing physically breaks down the food into smaller pieces. And your saliva, it contains enzymes that start breaking down those carbohydrates.
Oh, wow. So even before the food reaches my stomach, the breakdown process has already begun. That's pretty amazing.
It is. And from there, the food travels down a muscular tube called the esophagus into the stomach.
The stomach, that's where things get really interesting, right?
You could say that. The stomach is like a high-powered blender, churning and mixing the food with strong acids and enzymes, breaking it down even further.
Wow. So what happens next? Where does it go from there?
Well, once the stomach has done its job, the food moves into the small intestine.
The small intestine. Okay.
And this is where things get really cool. The small intestine is where most of the nutrients from that broken down food get absorbed into your bloodstream.
Oh, so it's like a nutrient extraction expert.
Exactly. And then whatever's left over moves into the large intestine where water is reabsorbed and what remains gets compacted into well waste.
So the large intestine is basically the cleanup crew. Not as glamorous as the small intestine, but hey, someone's got to do it.
Exactly. It's all part of this incredibly efficient system. But that fuel doesn't just magically appear in our muscles. There's a whole transportation system involved.
Right. We're talking about the circulatory system again, with the heart as the central pump.
You got it. And remember, it's not just a simple network of pipes. Blood itself is filled with these specialized cells, each with a vital role.
Right. We got those red blood cells carrying oxygen, white blood cells fighting off invaders.
And don't forget those tiny but mighty platelets.
Oh, yeah, platelets. What do those do again?
They're like the emergency repair crew rushing to patch up any leaks whenever there's a cut or injury.
It's really incredible how all these different components work together so seamlessly.
It is. And we can't forget about the system that keeps this whole operation running smoothly. I'm talking about the nervous system.
Ah, the nervous system, the master conductor of the human orchestra.
Exactly. It's responsible for everything from sensing the world around us to coordinating our movements to regulating our internal environment. It's basically the ultimate command center.
So the brain is calling the shots, and the spinal cord and nerves are the communication lines relaying those commands throughout the body.
That's a great way to think about it. And remember those reflexes we talked about earlier?
The super fast emergency braking system.
Exactly. That's just one example of how amazing the nervous system is. It can act to protect us from harm even before we're consciously aware of what's happening.
Okay, so let's bring it back to the golf course for a second. I'm standing over my ball, lining up my shot, taking a deep breath, and as I swing, my brain is orchestrating this complex sequence of muscle activations and joint movements. It's mind-blowing when you really think about it.
It really is. And here's something else that's pretty amazing. The more you practice that swing, the smoother and more automatic it becomes.
Right. I've definitely noticed that. Why is that?
Because your nervous system is learning and adapting. Every time you repeat that swing, your brain is strengthening the connections between the neurons involved. So the movement requires less conscious effort.
So that's why practice makes perfect. It's literally rewiring our brains. I love that.
It's true. And that same principle applies to learning any new skill. The more we repeat something, the more ingrained it becomes in our nervous system.
Okay, so if I want to improve my golf game, it's not just about hitting the driving range, it's also about training my brain.
Exactly. It's a fascinating interplay between mind and body.
This is all so incredible. I'm starting to see my body in a whole new light.
And we're just getting warmed up. Next, we'll explore what happens when this incredible machine of yours runs into a few bumps in the road. We're going to talk about injuries.
All right, bring on the bumps. I'm ready to learn how to keep this human machine running smoothly for years to come. So we've spent this whole deep dive exploring the human machine, right? From the engine to the fuel lines to the control center, it's amazing how much is happening inside of us all the time.
It really is, and just like any machine, your body needs proper care to run at its best. Think of this part of our deep dive as a look into the owner's manual.
I love the owner's manual for the human machine. Okay, so what are some of the key things we need to keep this machine running smoothly?
Well, we've talked about how glucose is our primary fuel source, right? But it's not just about getting enough calories, it's also about making sure we're getting the right kind of fuel.
So what kind of fuel should we be putting into our bodies? What's the premium gasoline for humans?
Well, think about your diet as a balanced blend of different fuel types, each with its own specific purpose. Complex carbohydrates like those you find in whole grains, fruits, and vegetables are like the slow-burning fuel, providing sustained energy.
Got it. Slow-burning fuel for those long drives. What about protein? I know that's important for building muscle.
Absolutely. Protein is essential for building and repairing tissues, especially those hardworking muscles. So make sure you're getting enough protein in your diet to support your workouts.
Okay, too. And then there's fat. What about fat?
Fat often gets a bad rap, but healthy fats are actually crucial for hormone production, cell function, and even cushioning our organs.
So it's all about balance, right? Making sure I'm getting enough complex carbs, lean protein, and healthy fats to fuel my body properly.
Exactly. And just as important as the type of fuel is the amount. Portion control is key. You don't want to overload the system.
Right, that makes sense. So what about regular maintenance? Just like my car needs oil changes and tune-ups, our bodies need some TLC too.
Well, the ultimate tune-up for your body is exercise. It keeps your muscles strong, your joints flexible, and your heart healthy.
No argument there. I definitely feel better when I'm exercising regularly. But there are so many different types of exercise. Where do I even start?
Well, think about it like choosing the right maintenance plan for your car. Aerobic exercise, like running, swimming, or biking, is great for your cardiovascular health.
So aerobic exercise is like the cardio for my car.
You got it. And then you have strength training, which helps build muscle and increase bone density.
And strength training is especially important for us golfers.
Yes, exactly. And let's not forget about flexibility training, like yoga or stretching.
Right. Flexibility is key for preventing injuries and keeping everything moving smoothly.
Precisely. But even the best maintained machines need rest. Imagine driving your car nonstop without ever giving it a break. Eventually, something's going to break down.
That's a scary thought. So how do we give our bodies a break?
Sleep is the ultimate recharge for your human machine. It's when your muscles repair themselves, your brain consolidates memories, and your hormones rebalance.
It's like hitting the reset button.
Exactly. And it's not just about how much sleep you get, it's also about the quality of that sleep. Make sure you're creating a relaxing bedtime routine, minimizing screen time before bed, and sleeping in a cool, dark, quiet environment.
I've definitely noticed that I don't perform as well when I haven't had enough sleep. It's like my engine's sputtering.
Exactly. Sleep is crucial for keeping everything running smoothly. But are you ready to take things even further?
Further, how do we do that?
Well, just like a high-performance car can benefit from upgrades and modifications, we can also enhance our own human machines. One simple but powerful upgrade is hydration.
Hydration. You mean drinking enough water?
Exactly. Our bodies are mostly water, and we need to replenish those fluids regularly, especially when we're exercising. Another powerful upgrade is mindfulness.
Mindfulness.
Yeah, paying attention to your body's signals, noticing how you feel, and responding accordingly. It's like having a built-in early warning system that helps you avoid pushing yourself too hard. And then there's the power of positive thinking. Believing in yourself, focusing on your strengths, and cultivating a positive mindset can have a huge impact on your performance.
Wow. So it's not just about the physical, it's also about the mental and emotional.
Precisely. It's all connected. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the human machine, what are your main takeaways?
Well, first of all, I'm blown away by how complex and efficient our bodies really are. But I've also learned that we have to take care of these amazing machines if we want them to keep running smoothly.
That's a great takeaway. Your body is an incredible gift. Treat it with respect, and it will reward you with years of health and vitality.
Well said. This deep dive has been absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with me.
My pleasure. Until next time, keep exploring and keep that human machine running strong.